Some more news and notes. Per the Mat Men podcast, WWE is looking at doing another draft after SummerSlam. Right now, the dates penciled in are Raw on August 30th and SmackDown on September 3rd. Considering how thin things feel roster-wise on the main brands right now, as far as, top baby faces and in the women's divisions, I don't think they have a choice this time but to call up some names from NXT. There might have been one or two drafts years ago where NXT had involvement, but some of the more recent ones, NXT was not formally involved or part of the draft. I really don't think they have a choice this time. They're going to have to call up some new faces. And the idea for SummerSlam this year is said to be for the show to be bigger than WrestleMania. WrestleVotes tweeted after speaking to a few sources on the topic, I've learned that WWE is 100% attempting to make SummerSlam this year's WrestleMania. All resources will be tapped into, is how it was explained to me. So there it is. We go from WrestleMania Backlash to WrestleMania SummerSlam coming up this August. By the way, based on what is shown on the Ticketmaster website, WWE is only setting Allegiant Stadium up for a little over half capacity. So that's somewhere in the 30 to 40,000 seat range for SummerSlam, which could change. But right now, that's all they're allotting for, which is still a lot of people if they can fill it. If they can get 40,000 people in there, that's still 40,000 people. But they clearly do not expect to fill the entire stadium if that's all that they're opening up. So anybody expecting a packed house, 60, 70,000 people for SummerSlam, right now, probably not going to happen. But, a lot of talk about SummerSlam coming up August 21st. And they do want to make this show out to be a big deal. Even if they don't have full capacity, they're going to have more people in the building than they did for either night of WrestleMania. This will be their biggest show since the start of the pandemic. And here's how I would map out, not the entire card, but the top of the card, the key matches on the card. Obviously, you hear a lot about Roman Reigns, John Cena. Is that going to be the match? It should be. Because that is, outside of The Rock, who I'll get to in a second, the biggest possible match I think you could do right now with Roman Reigns. So the main event should be Roman Reigns defending the Universal Championship against John Cena. John Cena coming back for one big match, at least one big match would be, a big deal. And Universal title on the line, which creates the story of Cena challenging for what would be title number 17. Just a natural story. Match has only been done one time before. Roman Reigns got the win there, but very different dynamic when you had two babyfaces in the ring together. So there's the big match, right? The other big match, and this does not sound as likely, but it's still a match that I would do everything in my power to try to put together. You lure back Brock Lesnar for a match with Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship. Doesn't even have to be for a championship, but it should probably be for the WWE Championship. Obviously, it's a match Lashley wants. He's talked about it in interviews for years. It's a match that has never been done before. Lashley has now been built up to a level where he is a champion on the level of what Lesnar was at one time in the company. I'm not saying he's as big of a star as Brock was, but Lashley was always underneath. He was intercontinental US level. Now he is the WWE champion. Now he is pushed as one of the biggest stars on Monday Night Raw. He has finally reached that level. After all the years that he has spent in this company, he's finally there, getting the biggest push of his life. If ever there was a time to do this match, now is that time. And that would be a huge double main event. Edge. Last we saw him, he was acting very heelish. I don't think that necessarily means when he comes back that he's going to be a heel. I would bring him back to SmackDown and pair him up with Seth Rollins for a match at SummerSlam. Sasha Banks challenging Bianca Belair for the SmackDown Women's title in a WrestleMania rematch is a natural, unless they want to add Bayley to make it a triple threat. Bayley was left off the WrestleMania card this year. They put her in a throwaway segment with the Bella Twins. So she deserves something bigger on this show. If not a triple threat, then why not a match against Becky Lynch? I was going to say Becky comes back and challenges Rhea for the Raw Women's title that she technically never lost. But the SmackDown Women's division is just so weak right now. And with Rollins on SmackDown, I don't think they would want to put him and Becky on separate brands and split them up like that. So you could load up that first SmackDown back in front of fans on July 16th. Bring Becky back that night. Build to a match with Bayley at SummerSlam. And you can keep Sasha against Bianca one-on-one. I'm cool with that. That works for me. You get 2 matches out of it instead of 1. You got Randy Orton and Matt Riddle. Clearly they are on their way to the Raw Tag Team titles. I would hold off until SummerSlam and have them challenge AJ Styles and Omos on that show for the belts. And then you do the Usos against Rey and Dominic Mysterio for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Those are the key matches that I would book for SummerSlam. Now, Drew McIntyre is the odd man out in that scenario if he doesn't go into the show as the WWE Champion, which he very well might. He very well might. But if not, he did an interview just in the past week or so where he talked about wanting to wrestle Walter. He said, we're going to make that match happen. It's just not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. SummerSlam is probably too soon for that to happen. The problem is, I don't want Walter anywhere near Raw or SmackDown under Vince McMahon's thumb. I mean, we already saw what happened in the one Survivor Series match that Walter was in, right? He was the first one out 2 or 3 minutes into the match. I look at a guy like Walter, and I've watched his work, and I like his work, and I know what he's about. And in a lot of ways, he's kind of a throwback. But I can't help but look at Walter and think, if I were Vince McMahon looking at Walter, would he see Walter the same way? I don't believe he would. And that scares the shit out of me. So that's my problem with the idea here. Were it not for that fact, yeah, hey, it would be a great match to do, Walter against Drew McIntyre. But for August, maybe it's a different NXT call-up. Maybe it's somebody else from NXT who gets called up and works with Drew. But there you go. That's my early SummerSlam card. So you can chime in with your thoughts on what you think about that. Now, Andrew Zarian is also reporting that Survivor Series is going to be hosted in Brooklyn this year. And internally, the hope is that they can get Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, to make an appearance on the show. That could be where they shoot some kind of angle that leads to Rock against Roman Reigns or WrestleMania next year in Dallas. With Rock, it always boils down to his movie schedule or insurance concerns if he wrestles a match. Because remember, the last big WrestleMania match that Rock had, I'm not counting the 6-second match he had with Eric Rowan, which also was in Dallas, actually. It was against John Cena. It was the second match against Cena. And The Rock tore like half a dozen muscles in his body. He was so injured and had to have surgery when the match was over. And he was almost 10 years younger in that match than he would be next year for this match. So yes, I could if you're a movie studio and you're working with Dwayne Johnson, I can understand why you would have reservations about him stepping back in the ring. But if you can get The Rock for a match, they would be crazy not to do it, almost regardless of who it's against. If you can get The Rock to commit to a match on a big show, you would be insane to not book him for that match. And with Roman, the whole tribal chief thing, head of the table, it just would lend itself so well. So it seems like they're hoping. WWE can hope. Doesn't mean they're going to get him. But they're hoping to get The Rock in Brooklyn for Survivor Series.